Okay, so I don't know about you, but I've been really curious about EFT, like how it works and if it can actually like rewire your brain. Well, I can tell getting ready for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really took me down a rabbit hole of some fascinating research. We're talking ancient Chinese medicine, we're talking cutting-edge neuroscience, and even a little bit of quantum physics, just for good measure.
Yeah, it really is kind of a fascinating intersection of ideas. You have this ancient practice, tapping on meridian points, which has been used for thousands of years in traditional Chinese medicine
Hmm.
to balance energy flow,
Yeah.
and then it meets modern psychology and this incredible discovery of neuroplasticity.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like the more we learn about neuroplasticity, the more we realize how much power we have to change our brains and therefore like our lives. But
Hmm.
maybe before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we should back up a little bit and just explain what EFT is and how it works for those who might not be familiar.
Absolutely. So EFT was developed in the 1990s by Gary Craig, and it essentially combines this ancient meridian system with modern psychological techniques. The basic idea is that by tapping on specific points on your body while focusing on a specific issue, whether it's anxiety or a past trauma or even a limiting belief, you can actually shift your energy and your emotional state.
Okay, so then how does tapping on these points, how does that actually lead to changes in the brain? This is where neuroplasticity comes in, right?
That's exactly right. Neuroplasticity is the brain's remarkable ability to change and reorganize itself throughout life. You know, for a long time, scientists thought that the brain was pretty much fixed after childhood. But now we know that's not true at all. Our brains are constantly adapting and rewiring based on our experiences and really what we focus on.
So every time we learn something new or have a new experience or even just think a certain thought, we're actually changing the physical structure of our brains.
That's right. And this is where EFT gets really, really interesting. Because by tapping on these meridian points, while focusing on these specific emotions or thoughts, it seems like EFT is actually leveraging neuroplasticity to create lasting changes in the way our brains process information
Mm.
and how they react to certain triggers.
Okay. So that makes sense. But, there's a lot of different parts to the brain. So does EFT affect the entire brain or are there specific areas that are kind of particularly impacted?
Though the research is still ongoing,
Mm.
but we're starting to understand how EFT impacts key areas that are involved in emotional processing. So take the amygdala, for example. The amygdala is often called our fear center because it plays such a crucial role in detecting and responding to threats.
Hmm.
So when we experience something stressful or frightening, the amygdala fires up and it triggers our fight or flight response.
Ah, so that explains why, like when I'm stressed, I get all jittery and I can't think straight. My amygdala must be in overdrive.
Right. And for people who struggle with anxiety or trauma, that amygdala response can be overly sensitive, which can lead to chronic fear and worry, and even panic attacks.
So where does EFT fit into all of this?
Well, studies have shown that EFT can actually help regulate the amygdala's activity. So by tapping on those meridian points,
Mm.
while focusing on the anxiety-provoking situation or memory, people can actually gradually reduce the intensity of their fear response. It's like they're retraining their brains to react differently to those triggers.
So instead of freaking out, they're learning to stay calm and collected. That's pretty incredible.
It is. And it's not just the amygdala. EFT also seems to impact the hippocampus, which is
Mm.
another key player in emotional processing. The hippocampus is really involved in memory formation
Mm.
and recall, especially emotional memories.
Okay. So if someone's been through a traumatic experience, EFT can help them kind of process and reframe those memories, leading to less emotional distress.
Exactly. By tapping on those meridian
Yeah.
points. While focusing on that traumatic memory, people can actually begin to release the emotional charge that's associated with it. It's not about erasing the memory, but rather it's about changing the way it's stored and accessed in the brain, so it no longer triggers those overwhelming feelings of fear or sadness or anger.
That's amazing. It's like EFT gives you a way to rewrite the emotional script that's been playing, like on repeat in your mind.
Yes, and the implications of that are huge. Think about someone who has been struggling with social anxiety for years. By using EFT to rewire their brain's response to those social situations, they can actually start feeling more confident and at ease in those settings.
So it's not just about masking the symptoms, it's about addressing like the root cause at a neurological level. That's a game changer.
It really is. And what's even more fascinating is that some researchers believe that EFT might also be working on a deeper level, beyond just the physical rewiring of the
I
brain.
Now I'm intrigued. What do you mean?
Well, this is where we start venturing into the realm of energy and even quantum physics.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Remember how we talked about EFT being based on the meridian system, that network of energy pathways in the body? Well, some researchers believe that EFT might be tapping into a deeper energetic level, beyond just the physical nerves and synapses.
So it's not just about stimulating nerves, but about influencing a more subtle energy flow within the body.
Precisely. And this is where the work of people like Dr. Bruce Lipton comes in. He's a cell biologist who has done some groundbreaking research on epigenetics, which is the study of how our environment and our perceptions can actually influence gene expression.
Hold on, you're saying that our thoughts and beliefs can actually change our biology. That's mind-blowing.
It is. Lipton's research shows that we're not just victims of our genes. Our perceptions, our beliefs, and even our thoughts can have a profound impact on our physical health and well-being. And this ties in directly with EFT, because the technique is all about shifting those beliefs and those emotional patterns.
So by tapping on these meridian points and focusing on positive affirmations or reframing limiting beliefs, we're actually sending new signals to our cells, which can then lead to changes in gene expression and ultimately our physical reality.
Exactly. It's like we're hacking into the software of our own biology, using EFT as the programming tool.
Okay, that's a powerful image. And this energy stuff, it's not just, some new age woo-woo. There's real science starting to back it up.
More and more each day. And this is where we start getting into some of the more kind of mind-bending aspects of quantum physics. You see, quantum physics has revealed that at the subatomic level, the world is a very different place than what we perceive with our senses.
This is the part where my brain usually starts to melt a little, but I'm game if you are.
Let's try to keep those brains intact.
Yeah.
One of the key concepts in quantum physics is this idea of non-locality, which means that particles can be interconnected, regardless of distance. It's like two particles can be light years apart and still somehow know what the other one's doing instantaneously.
Whoa, so are we saying that everything in the universe is somehow connected?
That's exactly what some physicists believe. And this idea of non-locality might actually have implications for EFT.
Okay, I'm all ears. How so?
Well, if you think about EFT as working on a deeper energetic level, then the principle of non-locality could explain how tapping on certain points on the body could have an impact on other parts of the body, or even on our emotional and mental states.
So it's like we're not just tapping on our physical body, but somehow tapping into this interconnected web of energy that permeates everything.
Exactly. And if that's true, then the possibilities are really quite mind-boggling. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's take a step back and talk about some of the key figures who have contributed to our understanding of the mind, the body, and reality. Because all of this is really essential context for understanding EFT's potential.
Okay, perfect. Let's meet the minds behind these ideas, because I'm starting to realize that EFT isn't just, some isolated technique. It's part of a much bigger conversation about consciousness and energy and the nature of reality.
Absolutely. And understanding those bigger concepts can really help us appreciate just how powerful and transformative EFT can be.
All right, so we've established that EFT might be tapping into something deeper than just our physical nerves and synapses, something that might even tie into this mind-bending concept of non-locality from quantum physics. I'm ready to explore these bigger ideas.
Well, let's start with someone whose work really bridges the gap between science and spirituality. Dr. Candace Pert, she was a neuroscientist who made groundbreaking discoveries about neuropeptides, these tiny molecules that act as messengers in the brain and body.
Oh, yeah. I remember reading her book, Molecules of Emotion. It really changed the way I thought about feelings. It wasn't just all in my head, it was happening throughout my body.
Exactly. Pert's research showed that emotions aren't just these abstract concepts. They have a very real physical presence in the form of these neuropeptides. And what's even more fascinating is that these neuropeptides aren't just found in the brain, they're present throughout the entire body.
So when I feel butterflies in my stomach when I'm nervous, or like a tightness in my chest when I'm sad, those are actual neuropeptides at work, communicating those feelings throughout my body.
Precisely. And this is where the connection to EFT becomes even more intriguing. Because if EFT is influencing energy flow, and energy is ultimately information, then it's possible that EFT is actually impacting the production and distribution of these neuropeptides, leading to changes in our emotional state.
So it's not just about changing our thoughts, but actually changing the physical chemistry of our bodies. That's powerful stuff.
It is. And it makes you wonder about the implications for healing. If we can use EFT to regulate these neuropeptides, then theoretically we could address a whole range of physical and emotional issues.
Now, that's an idea worth exploring. But before we get too carried away with the possibilities, who else should we add to our list of influential thinkers in this space?
Well, we can't talk about consciousness and energy without mentioning Dr. David Hawkins. He was a psychiatrist and consciousness researcher who developed something called the map of consciousness.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this map of consciousness. What is it exactly?
Essentially, Hawkins proposed that different emotional states vibrate at different frequencies, with positive emotions like love and joy having higher frequencies than negative emotions, like fear and shame. He created a scale that maps these emotions along a spectrum, with enlightenment at the top and shame at the bottom.
So the higher your emotional frequency, the better.
That's the general idea. Hawkins believed that by raising our emotional state, we could actually impact our reality and attract more positive experiences. And this aligns with what we're talking about with EFT, because the technique is all about shifting from those lower frequency emotions like fear and anxiety to higher frequency emotions like peace and joy.
So by tapping on those meridian points and reframing those negative thoughts, we're essentially raising our energetic vibration and aligning ourselves with more positive reality.
That's a great way to put it. And this is where things start to get really interesting, because it suggests that we might have more control over our reality than we realize.
Okay, now we're getting into some pretty heady territory. Are you saying that our thoughts can actually shape the world around us?
It's a concept that many physicists and philosophers are exploring. This idea that consciousness might actually play a role in shaping reality is gaining more and more traction. And while we may not be able to manifest sports cars and mansions with our minds just yet, there's growing evidence that our thoughts and beliefs have a very measurable impact on our lives.
So maybe EFT is more than just a tool for managing emotions. Maybe it's a way to tap into this deeper power of consciousness and influence like the very fabric of our reality.
That's certainly a possibility worth considering. And it leads us to another fascinating thinker, Donald Hoffman, a cognitive scientist who challenges our very understanding of what reality is.
Oh, I know Hoffman. He's the one who says we don't see reality as it is, but rather through an interface that's shaped by evolution, kind of like a desktop on a computer.
Exactly. He argues that our perception is limited by what's been evolutionarily beneficial for our survival. We don't see the underlying code of reality, just the icons and shortcuts that help us navigate the world.
So we're living in a virtual reality of sorts.
That's one way to think about it. And this ties into the work of other thinkers, like Tom Campbell and Michael Talbot, who have explored the idea that reality might be more like a simulation than a solid objective world.
Whoa, this is getting deep. But hold on, how does this simulation idea relate to EFT and what we've been talking about?
Well, if we entertain the possibility that reality is more fluid and malleable than we perceive it to be, then perhaps techniques like EFT are allowing us to interact with the code of this simulation, to change the program, so to speak.
So we're not just rewiring our brains, we're actually rewriting the reality code itself. This is some matrix-level stuff.
It's certainly a mind-bending concept, but even if we can't definitively prove or disprove it, the simulation hypothesis can serve as a powerful reminder that there might be much more to reality than meets the eye, and perhaps more potential for us to influence it than we realize.
So where does all of this leave us? It feels like we've gone on quite a journey. From ancient meridian points to quantum physics and the nature of reality, it's a lot to process.
It is. But amidst all these mind-blowing concepts, there's a recurring theme, the power of the mind. Whether we're talking about neuroplasticity, or the impact of our beliefs on our biology, or the possibility of influencing a simulated reality, it all comes back to the idea that our minds are far more powerful than we've been led to believe.
So maybe the real takeaway here isn't just about EFT, but about recognizing this innate power we have within us to shape our experiences and create the reality that we desire.
Absolutely. And perhaps EFT is just one of many tools that can help us access and harness that power.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. But for those of us who aren't quantum physicists or neuroscientists, how can we start applying these concepts to our everyday lives? Where do we even begin?
Well, a great place to start is with self-awareness, paying attention to your thoughts, your beliefs, and your emotional patterns. Because once you become aware of those patterns, you can start to shift them.
And that's where EFT comes in, right? As a tool for changing those thoughts and beliefs.
Exactly. But it's not just about tapping. It's about combining that tapping with a conscious intention to change, to release those limiting beliefs, those old stories that are holding you back, and embrace a new narrative, a more empowering vision of yourself and your reality.
So it's not just a mechanical technique, it's a mindset shift, a willingness to let go of the old and embrace the new.
Precisely. And that shift in mindset can be incredibly powerful because when you change your beliefs, you change energy. And when you change your energy, you change your reality.
This all sounds very empowering. But I'm sure there are some people listening who are thinking, this is all well and good, but does it really work? Is there actual evidence to support these claims?
That's a fair question. And the answer is yes. While research on EFT is still relatively new, there's a growing body of evidence demonstrating its effectiveness for a wide range of issues, from anxiety and depression to PTSD and chronic pain.
So it's not just anecdotal evidence. There are actual studies showing that EFT can create real, measurable changes.
Exactly. And as we continue to explore the mind-body connection and the mysteries of consciousness, I believe we'll uncover even more evidence to support the power of techniques like EFT.
This is all incredibly inspiring. It's like we're being given a whole new set of tools to empower ourselves and create the lives we truly desire. But before we get carried away with all the possibilities, I think it's time to bring it back down to earth a little bit and talk about some practical tips for incorporating EFT into our daily lives.
That's a great idea. Let's shift gears from the theoretical to the practical, because ultimately the real magic happens when we take these concepts and apply them to our real-world experiences.
Okay, so we've explored some pretty mind-blowing concepts in this deep dive. Neuroplasticity, energy, quantum physics, even the simulation hypothesis. But now I'm really curious to hear, your practical tips. How can our listeners actually start using EFT to make positive changes in their lives?
Well, one of the simplest and most effective ways to start is by incorporating EFT into your daily routine. You can use it to address specific challenges as they arise, or even just as a preventative measure to manage stress and maintain emotional well-being.
So it's like having a mental and emotional toolkit at your disposal, ready to use whenever you need it.
Exactly. And the beauty of EFT is that it's so adaptable. You can use it to work on anything, from anxiety and procrastination to relationship issues and even physical pain.
That's a pretty wide range. But for someone who's completely new to EFT, where do they even begin? What are the basic steps?
Well, the first step is to identify the specific issue that you want to address. It could be a feeling, a thought, a belief, or even a physical sensation. Once you've identified the issue, you rate its intensity on a scale of 0 to 10, with 10 being the most intense.
Okay, so if I'm feeling really anxious about an upcoming presentation, and that anxiety is at an 8 out of 10, that would be my starting point.
Exactly. Then you create what's called a setup statement that acknowledges the issue and accepts yourself despite it. For example, you might say, even though I'm feeling really anxious about this presentation, I deeply and completely accept myself.
And this acceptance part is important, right? It's not about pretending the anxiety isn't there, but rather acknowledging it without judgment.
Precisely. Then comes the tapping sequence. You use your fingertips to tap on specific meridian points on the body while repeating the setup statement and a reminder phrase that focuses on the issue.
So I'm literally tapping on my body while repeating phrases like, even though I'm anxious about this presentation, it sounds a little strange, but hey, I'm willing to try anything if it helps.
I assure you, it might feel a little unusual at first, but there's a growing body of research to suggest that it can be surprisingly effective. After a few rounds of tapping, you reassess the intensity of the issue. If it's gone down, you continue tapping until it reaches 0. If it's still high, you might need to adjust your setup statement or reminder phrase.
So it's a process of tuning in to your body and emotions and kind of adjusting the technique as needed. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. And that's what makes EFT so powerful. It allows you to tailor the technique to your individual needs and experiences.
Okay, I'm starting to get the hang of it. But let's say I'm working on something really deep-seated, like a past trauma or a limiting belief that's been holding me back for years. Is EFT really equipped to handle that?
Well, it's always a good idea to work with a qualified EFT practitioner, especially when dealing with trauma. But many people have found EFT to be incredibly helpful in processing and releasing emotional pain from the past.
So even if something happened years ago, EFT can still help to rewire those neural pathways and create new emotional patterns.
That's the idea. By tapping on those meridian points, while focusing on the traumatic memory or limiting belief, you can begin to shift the energy around it and release that emotional charge that it holds.
It's like you're giving your nervous system a chance to finally process and let go of that old pain.
Exactly. And this is where the connection to neuroplasticity becomes so important. Because with consistent practice, EFT can actually help to rewire those old neural pathways and create new, more positive associations.
So it's not just about feeling better in the moment, but about creating lasting change at a neurological level. That's pretty remarkable.
It is. And the more we understand about the power
Yeah.
of the mind-body connection, the more possibilities open up for healing and transformation.
This is all so inspiring. It feels like we're on the cusp of a new era of understanding when it comes to human potential and the power of the mind to shape our reality. But I'm curious, besides EFT, are there other things that people can do to kind of enhance neuroplasticity
Yeah.
and accelerate this rewiring process?
Absolutely. One of the most powerful practices is mindfulness meditation. Studies have shown that regular meditation can actually increase gray matter in the brain, particularly in areas associated with attention, compassion, and emotional regulation.
So taking some time each day to quiet the mind and focus on the present moment can actually make our brains more resilient and adaptable.
Precisely. And it's not just about sitting on a cushion and chanting Mindfulness can be practiced in many ways, from simply paying attention to your breath to engaging in activities that bring you joy and a sense of presence.
I love that. It's about finding what works for you and making it a part of your daily life. What about other things like exercise or diet? Do those play a role in neuroplasticity as well?
Absolutely. Regular exercise has been shown to increase levels of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, which is essentially like fertilizer for the brain. It helps to grow new neurons and strengthen the existing connections.
So getting that heart pumping and those endorphins flowing is not only good for the body, but also essential for a healthy brain.
Exactly. And when it comes to diet, a brain-healthy diet, rich in antioxidants, omega-3 fatty acids, and other essential nutrients, can provide the building blocks for optimal brain function.
So it's a holistic approach, really, taking care of our physical health, managing stress, and engaging in practices like mindfulness and EFT can all work together to support neuroplasticity and create lasting change.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual change, as we learn more about the interconnected nature of reality. It's becoming increasingly clear that our individual transformations can ripple outwards and impact the world around us.
So as we rewire our own brains for greater peace, compassion, and well-being, we're also contributing to a more positive collective consciousness. That's a powerful thought.
It is. And it reminds us that we're not just isolated individuals, but rather interconnected parts of a larger web of life. And as we heal ourselves, we contribute to the healing of the whole.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We've gone from the basics of EFT to the frontiers of neuroscience and quantum physics, exploring the power of the mind to shape our reality and create lasting change. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling incredibly inspired and empowered.
Me too. And I hope our listeners are feeling inspired as well. The takeaway here is that we are not victims of our circumstances or our biology. We have the power to change, to heal, and to create the lives we truly desire. And techniques like EFT can be invaluable tools on that journey of transformation.
So to everyone listening, remember your brain is not fixed. It's a dynamic, ever-evolving organ, capable of incredible change. Embrace the power of neuroplasticity. Explore the possibilities of EFT. And remember, the journey of transformation begins with a single step.
And who knows? As we continue to explore these mind-body practices and uncover the mysteries of consciousness, we might just unlock even greater potential within ourselves and the world around us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep rewiring your brain for a brighter future.